If you'd like, you could stay. Or if you'd like, you can also leave. Don't forget, freedom of the press.
And that was President Trump telling the press yesterday they are free to go or stay during Thursday's cabinet meeting. This was the same day that more than 300 newspapers all across the country launched coordinated editorials as an effort to combat the president's full-on what they would describe as a war on media. Well, President Trump continued his Twitter taunts, blasting newspapers and media outlets as fake news. Omarosa, his former aide, released another tape, the first tape where we actually heard a voice of a Trump family member, and she hinted that there are more tapes to come. Back with me now, Nancy Cook, Jonathan Allen, and Seung-Min Kim. Thanks so much for staying with me, Nancy. I want to start with you. Let me read you what the editor of the Boston Globe had to say. Marjorie Pritchard, she wrote this: I hope it would educate readers to realize that an attack on the First Amendment is unacceptable. How was this effort yesterday received by 350 publications all across the country?
Well, I think it made a big splash that so many publications banded together. And I do think recently the president has been going after the press much more. And there was a sense that this was the time to speak up. There's, I think, a fear among reporters that maybe people could be targeted or something could happen at a rally. But of course, the president tried to use this as an opportunity to say that the press was colluding somehow. He really tried to, again, turn his supporters against the press. So, of course, there was sort of the backlash from his conservative base.
Well, and I think that's an important point, and that was the concern among some publications who didn't join in, including the LA Times, who wrote this, quote, the idea of joining together to protest President Trump seems almost to encourage that kind of conspiracy thinking by the president and his loyalists. Why give them ammunition to scream about collusion? Sung, does the LA Times have a point that when you see this coordinated effort you're feeding right into the president's hands, you give him something to point to?
I think they very precisely do have a point, and I want to point out the Washington Post did not participate in the coordinated editorials either. And I think it does play, I mean, we've seen how the Trump has made us, the people in the press, a foil to him so much throughout his presidency. And it does play right into his hands. And look, we talk about the president's approval ratings very often, but let's be honest, the media don't have a great approval rating with the public either. So the president sees this as a fight that he wants to have, that he thinks that he can win. I just in doing this, just kind of think of the words of our editor, Marty Barron, just saying that we're not at war with the administration. We're just at work. We're just doing our jobs.
And I think a lot of media outlets have that same perspective and approach to what is, frankly, a challenging moment. When you talk about being at war with the Trump administration, one person is. That is Omarosa, his former aide, his former apprentice, who came out yesterday with yet another tape on our air. This one, a conversation she had with Lara Trump. Take a look.
So the only thing that we have to consider when we're talking salary as far as the campaign is concerned is that, as you know, everything is public. And all the money that we raise and that pays salaries is directly from donors, small dollar donors for the most part. So I know you were making $179 at the White House. And I think we could work something out where we keep you right along those lines. Specifically, let me see, I haven't even added up the numbers, but we were talking about like $15K a month. Let me see what that adds up to. 12. Yeah, so that's $180,000. Does that sound like a fair deal for you?
And that was aired on Craig Melvin's Hour. This is what Lara Trump had to say yesterday about this very firm statement. She writes, I'm absolutely shocked and saddened by her betrayal and violation on a deeply personal level. I hope it's all worth it for you, Omarosa, because some things you just can't put a price on. Jonathan, your reaction, and what did we learn from that tape? Is there anything absolutely damning in that recording?
So a couple of things. If Lara Trump was trying to make this sound less like a soap opera, she failed. Number two, I think what we heard is what I would call quid amateur quo, as opposed to quid pro quo. You've got Lara Trump on this tape essentially offering what sounds, I think, to most of us like hush money, basically a no-show job with the campaign for $15,000 a month. She said, you can go to meetings in New York and you can occasionally make speeches, but largely we'll pay you $180,000 to do not much of anything. I think that's what we've learned is what we already sort of knew, which is that there's this sort of ham-handed, not like The Godfather, but like some much lesser organization, frequent effort to get people to not say anything about Donald Trump that involves relatively small amounts of money. Not that $180,000 a year is a tiny amount of money, but if Omarosa's got, as she's claiming, many more tapes, there's probably some value to those tapes either for Donald Trump or for his opponents.
Sungmin, how concerned is the White House that there may be as many as 200 tapes as the Times is reporting today?
Well, we see from the actions, as we discussed earlier in the show, clear concern, and that's why they're taking dramatic actions such as the security clearance issue to kind of deflect from that. And Omarosa has hinted that there are so many more tapes to come. The New York Times has said they're concerned that there could be as many as 200 tapes. So we could be seeing these tapes drip out over and over through the election, which is, or even beyond, which is kind of interesting because I believe in the interview with Meet the Press earlier this week, Omarosa said she's disclosing it now because she kind of didn't want this to be an October surprise, but it may well be through the election.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.